Hi, everybody. It is 6 p.m. in Paris, 5 p.m. in London, 7 p.m. in Beirut, noon in Boston and New York, 6 p.m. Milan, and I think it's 11 a.m. in Hamilton. I'm Mohamad Mohty from the Sorbonne University and Saint Antoine Hospital in Paris, in France. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this very special webinar brought to you by the International Academy for Clinical Hematology. And the title is How to Prevent Burnout and Cultivate Satisfaction and Fulfillment. And I will not spend a lot of time highlighting that in today's practice of clinical hematology and oncology in general, the healthcare professionals, especially physicians, whether seniors or juniors, are really facing a fast-paced, complex, highly bureaucratic, highly demanding work environment. With this in mind, with this background, it's very easy to lose sight of the importance of satisfaction and professional fulfillment. Also, we should not forget that the current work models may put a lot of, I would say, emphasis on some so-called academic success, scientific productivity, H-index, impact factor, career advance, promotion. However, we should not neglect that happiness, and I would say well-being in general, are mandatory requirement to deliver a high standard of care. I think we are treating a patient with devastating, life-threatening diseases. And in order to deliver this high quality of care, we healthcare professionals, we also need to be in good shape, I would say, both physically and psychologically. So this was the idea behind this special webinar. And our panelists today are several well-established hematologists from across the globe, different places. I'll start with the ladies. Dr. Nour Moukalled from the American University of Beirut Medical Center in Lebanon. Dr. Hira Mian from Hamilton in Canada. Dr. Annalisa Ruggeri from Milan in Italy. Dr. Josh Richter from New York. And last but not least, Professor Didier Blaise from Marseille in France. And in order to support our discussion, we are very privileged and proud and honored having with us a very special person who kindly accepted to be with us in this webinar, namely Mrs. Deborah Lovich, who is a managing director and senior partner at BCG. She is a global leader, actually, in how to make work work. And she will explain her vision and her views on this. She has a deep culture in leadership, expertise, and for the last 30 years or so, she has been serving a variety of in a variety of leadership and operational roles, trying to address the human side of large-scale change, integration, digital transformation, co-creating a sort of a future-forward work models to improve things. So, Debbie, we're very privileged and honored having you with us. So, my first question, and please don't hesitate to communicate, interact with each other, and we'll try also to interact with our audience. This is a live webinar brought to you by the ICH. So my first question, and I don't know who wants to jump in, is about what is your thought about what our hospitals, our institutions should do today to tackle this problem of exhaustion, burnout, and people complaining about the constant, continuous pressure, bureaucratic pressure, where we can see people leaving academia and even people are stopping, discontinuing their medical career and doing completely something else. And this is at this era completely difficult. So I don't know who wants to start. Nour, wonderful.
I just want to thank you again, Dr. Mohty, for this opportunity and for this webinar. I think things should start by identifying the importance of burnout and not just waiting for people to have burnout, but to identify ways to identify and prevent it. And this starts by the institutions acknowledging what we are facing as hematologists nowadays.
Excellent. Thank you, Didier.
Yes, I would say, because as you say initially, due to my seniority status, senior status, I could say that things, time have changed and situation have changed. I don't say that before burnout didn't exist. I think it existed, but it was not so pregnant than now. And one of the many reasons explains that. But I do think that it's more and more a big problem, because before we have way of compensation. And this way of compensation in our work, because we are always happy to do our work, but we have really great compensation before, have decreased over time because we need more time. And it's because of the pressure of the hospital, because of the pressure of the computer system, of the IT and everything like that. And it's more and more complex in this situation.
Thank you, Didier. Josh?
So they actually have this weird term for it that they call muffin rage. And let me explain what muffin rage is. There's this Google term now for groups of people that are dealing in hospitals with all of these pressures, and the administrative answer is, let's give you a pizza party, let's give you a basket of muffins or some small token. And literally they created this, it went viral, I think, right after COVID, muffin rage. And I think Nour's comment is the crux of this, is this needs to be looked at and addressed head on, and not with little band-aids as it goes along, but to really sit down and listen to the groups, I think especially of our junior colleagues, because I see more and more of them leaving because their thoughts and concerns are not being taken in seriously. They're saying, here's a coffee coupon, here is a small token of our recognition, but this is almost like a smoldering myeloma that is, rising in paraprotein. We know this is going to cause a trouble, and trying to find the right time to intervene.
Thank you, Josh. Debbie?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's true across industries, and it is different than it was before, not just because of the financial piece, Didier, that you talked about offsetting it, but at a macroeconomic level, there are physically more jobs out there in most countries than there are people to fill those jobs. And that ratio has been getting tighter and tighter and tighter, meaning there are less and less people out there. And attrition, people saying, I've had it, whether they leave a job, right? Or they, this new term that was coined during COVID, I quietly quit, like I'm just going to punch the clock, I'm just going to go through the motions, but I'm not going to, right? That has, attrition's been growing and growing. And when there's a fundamental shift that all organizations need to make, and that is to think about all of their employees like customers. And if you go back, so I've been in consulting, as you said, for over 30 years. And at the beginning of my career, every institution is about making money. right? Can we even nonprofits, we need to generate profit to support the institution, right? We need to be financially viable. About the late 80s through the 90s, customer importance grew, right? We have to think about our customers, think about our patients, think about, right? We have to be really customer centric. But still, up until now and still, most organizations think about employees as a means of production. I don't want to belittle what you do, but you're a input to get to an output, which is profit or financial viability, and keep the customers coming back. You know, we want to be the hospital of choice, the product of choice, whatever. Because of those macroeconomic forces, I believe we're on the precipice of needing to elevate employees to think about them just like their customers, which means that you don't need to just think about functional needs like pay and hours, but you need to think about emotional needs as well, right? There's like, people don't spend $5 to $10 for a cup of Starbucks coffee because they could get a good cup of coffee elsewhere. It's the emotional feeling you get when about the quality and the third place that is the coffee shop, right, has become. And so I think, Nour, you said it first, right? Hospitals need to care about it. The administration needs to care about it. They need to understand that the employee, whether it's the physician or the nurse or the med tech or the food services person, they need to think about you the same way they think about customers. And even if they don't care, they need it to keep production going, right? Because they're going to lose you. And when you do that, there is real sophisticated listening that needs to happen, not just exit interviews, you know, because people don't tell you the full story, right? But really doing sophisticated listening and then thinking about not just what's the functional experience of working at this hospital, but what's the emotional experience and how do you deliver against both of those?
Thank you, Debbie. We'll get back to this emotional aspect, but let me ask you, Hira and Annalisa, a very practical question. What is today in your institution, and this is across the Atlantic, you know, one in Canada, one in Italy, so one would imagine things are totally different. I'm not convinced. What is today in your daily practice making your life difficult, and what you would like to see changing? We heard about the IT. I think Debbie alluded to the shortage actually of manpower. And actually, in my personal opinion, but I'm not here to give my personal opinion, a part of the happiness and satisfaction is maybe to be slightly overstaffed. And today our institutions are pushing to be understaffed because of these metrics of productivity and generating more revenues. Hira, what can you?
Thank you. And thank you so much for the invitation. And, you know, thank you for bringing this important topic to light. So I would say, you know, clinically, there are challenges, and especially someone alluded to with the IT system. So even a few years ago, I could tell my nurse, hey, can you arrange for 2 units of blood to be given? Now it cannot happen. I must have to put it into the Epic computer systems. So a lot of it, you're right, because of the way the staffing has changed, a lot of that burden is now placed upon us. And it's small little things. So like in the summer, everybody's going on holidays, but their chemo schedule can only physically be changed by me. Whereas previously, a few years ago, before our new computer system, I could have said, hey, can you move the bortezomib to a few days later when the patient comes in? Now I have to log in, click, 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 many clicks to change that. So I feel like we do feel quite overburdened with some of the clinical bureaucratic admin system now. That's from a clinical end. And then I would say, you know, even from a research end, it's a lot of those steps as well. You know, when you're trying to bring, for example, a researched clinical trial, the delays in contract, the constant justification. By the time you're opening a clinical trial, you're already so exhausted by having to constantly justify and then there's different departments and every department works separately. And so you need to go to each one and explain it. So I feel like so much of our day is spent explaining, justifying, and we sometimes do, you know, there's lots of great things about institution, but sometimes we do just end up becoming a metric, and you feel that way as well. Like, so those are some of the initial challenges that I can think of.
Thank you, Hira. Annalisa, how is it at San Raffaele in Italy, in Milan?
Thank you. Absolutely, I agree. One of the most important point which makes me frustrated every time is always the time we need to offer to the bureaucracy, because everything is like a formal request that you have to produce exactly at that time without any possibility of having IT help or administrative help, especially. Therefore, all your workup for a single patient is delayed because of the bureaucracy. You need to call and try to discuss with, I can say, 4 or 5 different secretaries before having the access to your colleague and saying, hey, I really need the CT scan now because I have a clinical suspicion for that patient. And this is something that it is really frustrating, because you cannot lose all your energy in that. And it is something that I think we really try to overcome with the availability of people who are really positive in like having a specific task. We have a very nice work team with the younger residents who are very committed and very happy in providing this special task. And this is, I think, something that can help in like say, oh, please, Gregorio, which is one of my favorite residents, to go direct to the take your mission and try. And this, I think, it helps in overcoming the frustration, because it's like, this is my objective for today, and I will do my best for giving this exam for the patients at that time. So this is one. And the other thing that I really think it is very, very important is the possibility of being in the condition of say, no, I can't now. Because of course there is the nurses, there is the resident, there is your colleague, there is the consultant, and then you feel like, oh, and how I can, there is the paper, the research, the abstract. So at the end, you have really to work with yourself and try to be able to set the priority and defend it. In order to avoid, because in Italy in particular, the system is really like freezed in bureaucracy. You cannot get the drugs, you cannot get the test. If you don't fill the form and don't ask the chimerism before in the computer, then in the paper, and then you scan. So this is really something that unfortunately we are very far for implementing. So I think that having working in the team and try to see, oh, this is our mission, is probably a joke that can help in reducing the frustration.
Thank you, Annalisa. Didier, you wanted to comment.
I think everything a lot of things have been said, and I fully agree with that. First, just a comment. When I say recognition in my first intervention, I was not talking about the financial recognition. It was clearly the recognition and the appreciation we can get from all the other people from the administration. And I think Debbie said something very important. She said that it's all the same way, all the same situation in the companies. And I think the bottom line is that hospital has become companies, and it's very, very difficult. And now we are faced to this unbalance due to the fact that because of all the rule of all the need of the administrative work, the people working in the administrative office have really dramatically increased, contrary to the number of doctors or healthcare people And that's very, very important because you are faced now to people who have no real experience. I mean, they have experience in many other things. They are very knowledgeable, but no experience of the hospital. And that is very frustrating because you have not the time you have before to think, and it's part of the recognition to have the time. I think the treasure we have lost is the time because we have to face all the deadline at this point. And just to finish, one example could be the clinical trials. Clinical trials was something wonderful before because we have an idea to treat better the patient we wanted to treat. At the present time, it's very difficult because we have to follow all the rules. And I don't say we have not to follow the rules, but it's so complicated. And you are faced to people who just have read the book, have not understood exactly what is in the book. And they will say, oh, you have to do that because it's written in the book. And I think it's part of this problem. And I can understand that young people.
Just to echo what you're saying about clinical trials, Didier, in the last less than 10 years, I think, the number of paperwork, the amount of paperwork in clinical trials, not related to efficacy or safety of the trial, which are, of course, the main goal of performing a trial, have increased by 250%. Just paperwork, receiving queries about the spelling of my name, Mohamad versus Mohammed. I can assure you, you can spend hours because someone, put an A or an E. How can this impact negatively the outcome of a trial? And then my people, my clinical research associate, are going to spend hours to respond to queries because the spelling of my name has changed by one letter. And of course, they tell me, oh, the rule, it needs to be written correctly. Well, anyway, Josh, you wanted to add something, I think.
No, other than one of the things that I think Hira brought up, which is absolutely true, it's the number of steps that has to transpire to accomplish anything. And part of the issue is not just the number of steps, but when I'm in the middle of clinic right now, I'm on a brief little break, but when I see a patient later today and a blood test is not back, is it because the nurse didn't put the order in? She put the order in and there was a computer problem. The phlebotomist might have missed that too. The lab might not have reported it. So I think, to echo what Didier said as well, it's the ongoing complexity of getting to the crux of patient care. That is, to me, a key source of frustration.
Excellent, thank you. So Debbie, you heard what our colleagues are saying. In your opinion, because I mentioned this in my introduction, we hematologists and oncologists in general, for very sick people. And actually, if you want to care for very sick people, you need yourself to be in good shape. So the question to you, Debbie, and looking from outside and having this large spectrum of different industries, how can we push to create this positive work environment? I don't believe we're going to change all the laws and rules suddenly, but how can we push? And how can we, in our own environment with all the different characteristics? I mean, Annalisa mentioned the specific of Italy, and we had a nice comment from Dr. Dragani, to whom I say hello. I think he spent some training in France a few years ago, who's mentioning that his experience in France was different from the experience in Italy as a medical student. So how can we create this positive work environment? And I know we may not solve it today, but I have always learned that discussing a problem is getting closer to the solution.
Yeah, there's so much there. So, there's an organizational solution, and then there's what can an individual do, an individual clinician or medical, professional. At an organizational side, where I started to talk before, back to, I think, the opening comment of we should get the administration to care and to listen and to hear, right? But organizations, and I suspect many of the organizations that you work in, or some of the attendees work in, have gone through processes to improve their customer experiences, like they make the waiting rooms nicer, they have a one-stop shop, they try and make the forms electronic, so once you enter in something, you don't have to enter it a million times, right? Like organizations are going through the process of really thinking about their customer experience to attract more volume into the institution, right? And so, like, I just remember I have 4 children spaced out over 7 years, and my last childbirth was so cushy compared to my first because all the hospitals in Boston are competing to get the maternity patients, right? So there is a customer-centric approach that many organizations have already taken to make the patient experience or the caregiver experience better. They have to turn that same lens on their employees, right? That you have to do that same. And that is like spending a day shadowing you and doing the ethnography. It's the listening and the focus groups. It's the research as if you're customers, right? And asking you to make trade-offs. And so there's a whole organizational solution out there, right?
Can I ask you a provocative question, Debbie? Because this competition may be true in New York, in Boston, in Beirut, or in Hamilton. But if I consider my hospital or the hospital in Marseille or in Milan, which are like public hospitals in general, my hospital people say, anyway, patient will come to us anyway. We're the only provider. They have no choice. It's a sort of a public socialist healthcare system. And does this make a difference in the way you are viewing the problem?
It definitely makes a difference in who the stakeholders are, and what the motivation is. We do a lot of customer like patient care work with socialized medicine because it's the governments that care and the politicians that are getting beaten up. And, like that's a real issue, like patients who can't get access to appointments for critical diseases for 6 to 9 months, right? So I think there are different forces and different stakeholders, but I've seen that issue in the public domain as well. I mean, I personally did work with a state government in the US on their system, right? And, indigent patients have no choice but to go to the state system, right? But again, they care about it. It's a voting issue and it's a government issue. So, in any place where there's a political vote, a democracy, right? It's different stakeholders. Does that resonate, Mohamad?
No, fine, fair enough. I agree with you, but maybe it's less easier than when you have this direct, straightforward financial incentive saying, okay, I will recruit this patient instead of the hospital next door. And then obviously there is more incentive. Here, the incentive is more complex.
That's right.
To achieve.
And it may be actually, if you're understaffed or right, it might actually be less of a, like in the US, my argument is you're doing it for your customers, do it for your employees too. It could be in a socialized medicine world, actually, you can't keep your employees, back to my macroeconomic point, right? Like there are more jobs and capable, qualified people to fill those jobs. And so it may actually be even a more direct argument in those markets where you have to make it better. But again, that's an organizational thing. And I don't think that's very useful to any individual on the call. I do think from an individual perspective, I mean, there's one is you could take care of yourself, right? Like there is you're just one person, like at some point the work ends, but it shouldn't be exhaustion and starvation, right? Like you could set your personal bar a little bit above higher aspirations than exhaustion and starvation because there's infinite to do anyhow, right? So I think finding ways to take care of yourself and build healthy habits and all that kind of stuff is really important. But I also think, with your peers, not waiting for the institution to do something for you, but really like getting together as a group of peers and saying, okay, let's do a little diagnosis ourselves about, okay, what is really sucking the like the energy out of us? What is really killing us? Can we come up with a solution here? Maybe it's even like we take turns, or maybe one person figured out because they're a techno whiz how to automate things that are manual, or and so I think just getting together and maybe using some of your, conference time to talk about this, just like this is a forum that normally talks about medical things, like maybe use some of your conference time to talk about these issues, to ideate solutions, to implement them, and then do the retrospective, the M&M conference on a process change instead of a medical outcome would be A. And B, I would encourage you to broaden the aperture of who's the we to solve this. And if you think about your nurses, your technicians, your, I don't know, food services staff, like you all are an ecosystem. And I'm not a medical professional, but I'm married to one. And I know, like there is a little bit of, like different groups or classes. And actually, the more you could do to break down those silos between functions or even classes in a group and bring them in and make, we're all in this together. You could at least make the interactions, back to the emotional point, like just the sense that we're all in this together. So anyhow, a couple of thoughts.
Wonderful. Team members should rely on each other whenever this is possible. I think Didier, you wanted to add something.
Yes, I think we are nevertheless very naive on many things, and notably in innovation. We always think that doing innovation is something important. And let's just give me an example. In 2019, after 4 years of heavy work, I was very happy and proud to open a new building for hematology in my hospital. So you can imagine that's very important. That's something wonderful for the patient and wonderful for the work. What I didn't realize at this time is that doing that, all the hematologists stay in this building, are not interacting anymore with the surgeon, with the radiologist around the coffee. And on the top of that, everybody have an office. So that was wonderful, with a coffee machine in the office. So you'd have not to go outside to get the coffee and discuss with the people. And on the top of that, of course, 2019, 2020, COVID arrived. And at this time, we were completely closed in our office for several months, not exchanging anything. And the burnout exploded in my hospital for many people. So I do think when I say we are naive, when we think about this kind of change in an organization, we have to think about many other things around that and to compensate what we will lose with a new organization. And I do think we have not done that, at least in my hospital.
Thank you, Didier. And you're absolutely right. Things have been modified dramatically since the COVID pandemic. Nour, you wanted to comment here.
I wanted to say that as someone who just started building the career and practicing, I think also that we should pay very close attention to our fellows in training, because I think that most institutions don't do a good job to prepare the fellows to when they will become attendings and to start practicing and building their career. So I think that this should be part of acknowledging the presence of the burnout, the risk to have a burnout, having this difficult job, to acknowledge this and to know how to prepare your own strategy to fight it since starting your career and not after having the burnout and checking for solutions for it.
Excellent, thank you. And actually, we have a comment from Dr. Esra Gulduran from Turkey, who's sharing her experience, how she managed to implement several positive changes in her life during her residency. Focusing on negative is important, but balancing them with positive is equally crucial. Receiving timely and accurate advice from mentors has truly improved her experience and growth. And experience with patient publishing work and spending time with family and friends. So, okay, let's continue this discussion about what we can do to improve things at the individual level. We heard about the institutional level, and there is a lot to do, but what kind of advice can we give to our colleagues? I personally, for instance, as head of department, my goal is, and this has been mentioned, I think, is always to try to surround myself and recruit people in my department with high character, but also with emotional intelligence. I like the impact factor. I look into the list of publications, the CV, but I can assure you that's not the main criteria to recruit people. Feeling, the eye contact in an interview with someone is crucial for me more than the Nature or Science paper. Debbie, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to tap into that, and also the comment that you just read from the Q&A. She wrote something about, having a senior leader say thank you, give positive, and your comment about looking people in the eye and emotional intelligence. Like, there are so many people who are good at their craft, but really nasty. And just if you think, I tell people, senior leaders often, if you think something positive about something, find a way of saying it, right? Like whether it's an email to someone or you mention it to someone, oh, that other clinician did something wonderful, or that nurse really saved that patient, or just you could create an atmosphere of positivity, which really helps, because if you're working really hard, to have negativity around you, is just exponential multiplier of the negativity. If you're working really hard, but it feels like you're in it together, you're mission oriented, you're doing something good, people are saying nice things, that carries so much weight, and that is in everyone's control. You could change that this afternoon or tomorrow if it's evening for you.
Thank you, Debbie. Hira?
So I was just going to follow up on some of the comments made. We've talked a lot about the challenges, but I agree we're starting to go into some of the solutions. And I think you're totally right. When you're interviewing a person as a colleague, one of the key things I look for is, would I knock on their door and ask them to go down for a coffee with me? That's the number one criteria, more than anything else. And then the other part is, it's also finding kind of the right people for the right job. So I would add in, not everybody should be expected to publish 100 papers in first 5 years of faculty, but the people who want to should be allowed to do that as well. And so the expectation is just, we need to make sure that we're hiring people and putting people in really leveraging what drives them. And for some people, it may totally be the research, and then it's managing expectations. If you want to be on the ASH podium, well, you probably will have to write abstracts the weekend before ASH. There's no other way to do it. But it's okay if you don't want to submit an ASH abstract also. So I think sometimes just really having clarity and valuing all aspects of what people do is helpful for a kind of a cohesive team environment as well.
Well, that sounds like music to my ears, Hira, and you mentioned the ASH abstract. And whenever I am at ASH, I always say we need to be very thankful and grateful. If we are here, it is because there are people who stayed at home, and thanks God they didn't submit any abstract. They don't have any presentation, and they are running the department and taking care while we are enjoying the ASH meeting. Josh.
Yeah, so I think, especially in these academic settings, we get very hung up on, the kind of big goals. And one of the things that really helps me is kind of the joy in the day-to-day goals and the joy in the day-to-day victories. I think a lot of us went into this at the core, and you've mentioned this already, of treating patients. And yes, I want not four more. I want New England Journal of Medicine articles. I want to be on the podium. But what gets me through the day every day, and what's helping me today, is sitting down with a woman who 5 years ago thought that she was going to be dead from myeloma. and taking the immense joy and sharing with the patient that joy that, you know what, you're MRD negative, and I'm so glad you got to live this life event and many more ahead of it. So to me, it's just to remind myself that we're taking on this amazing responsibility. But what comes with that amazing responsibility of caring for patients is sharing in the joy of their accomplishments, of what they have achieved in their life, and that really helps me on a day-to-day basis.
Lovely example, Annalisa.
Yes, thank you. So I would like to come back to the discussion that was raised by Hira, namely the how to organize when you want to do the abstract. And I think this is an important point, and it's something that probably you and Didier could explain a little bit in how to manage this stuff. Because of course the tasks are not, I mean, the feeling and the decision of like doing very active in research could not be shared by everyone, but how to create a positive environment into the staff in order to do not say, oh, this is she's the one who is able to write 7 abstracts just in 3 hours, so she is the only one going to the conference. And I think one important point is always to try to share and give the opportunity and the possibility to the younger to let them recognize also for all the effort that they do. And of course, it takes more time to the senior to help them in writing and being the first author of their first paper. But I think that this is really something important that in academia we can do for, balancing a little bit the tremendous efforts in the clinical work.
Thank you, Annalisa. And I think you are raising a very important point, and Hira alluded to this. Let the people do what they can do best and what they feel like doing. And if someone happiness comes mainly from daily care of the patient, that's fine. And if someone gets a lot of satisfaction with the ASH abstract, that's also fine. And obviously, there should be no, in my opinion, a sort of a gradient or a level of, well, the best are the ones who do the abstract. The other ones are, second class or first class. I mean, Nour, what do you think?
Yes, I agree. I think that one of the things that success is measured by numbers sometimes. I feel this brings stress at really very high levels, because at the institution, people will check how many articles did you publish during this year, how many abstracts. And I remember actually when I was a fellow and I was working on a review with one of my mentors, he used to tell me, don't forget to enjoy working on this project, writing the review, checking the data, improving your knowledge. It shouldn't be only about, of course, we'll be happy with the end result, and this is very important, but you have to enjoy what you are doing. And I think this comes with the very high expectations institutions are setting for us, and even we are setting for ourselves. We want to do more, we want to do research, we want to teach. So you feel that you are split between all of these tasks, and then you feel that maybe I'm not able to do all the tasks together. I also want to mention one point I think is very important, and we lived it like the last week. I think I totally agree that remembering the joy when you feel with the patients, any success, this is why we do this job, this is why we do research. But also having the ability to express your negative feelings. Sometimes some patients just affect us, and it's very difficult for us to just come the next day to work as if nothing happened. And I feel that sometimes many of us tend to do this. We don't find the opportunity to express what we are truly feeling after a loss of a patient or a relapse or any other thing.
agree with you, Nour, and because people expect that you're supposed to be a superwoman, a superman. You shouldn't have feelings. You're very strong. You're very clever. You have to handle all situations, and we need to find a sort of a frame where we can also, as just physicians with their feelings, to express the negative and positive. Most of you mentioned the issue of mentorship and the role of the leadership in creating this positive environment. And I believe we need to really cherish the good leadership. And I was very lucky and fortunate having the best mentor with Didier in my early ages. So Didier, how did you manage to be this great mentor and great leader, creating happiness around you? Because I thought we were very happy. We were all very happy.
Yeah, you are too kind, Mohamad. In fact, I think we share so many things with the people that you were working with at this time, and it was really very important to have this opportunity to discuss the bad things and the good things. And we wanted, I think, all together, in terms of science and in terms of medical care, we decided that the glass we have in our hands was always half empty. And we wanted to fill it up. And we worked a lot to change the situation. And it was the common goal. And to have this common goal is something important. But once again, I will come back to one of my previous comment, where the leaders have been very naive. We have all good students. And when the administration says something, say, oh, if they say that, they know. And they probably are right. And we have accepted things that didn't impact me because I was in a situation that not really impacted me, but impacted much more the youngest one. And we have we let the situation change a lot just by the fact that we didn't realize what will be the important thing. One of the most important example is the electronic record. I do think that it's something still important for me. But once again, we didn't compensate all the work needed to do the electric record for the doctors. And that's something we did not imagine, we didn't think we change the situation. And I do think that we have part of responsibility in that.
Absolutely. So Debbie, what is your opinion and your advice about the role of leaders and mentors in trying to change the current situation?
It's everything. It's everything. I mean, leaders, like people point to culture. The culture in this institution is really positive or really negative. The number one driver of culture are leaders. It's what they say, what they do, where they spend their time, who they celebrate, who they invite to discussions, right? How they share information. You know, one of my favorite stories is the very well-known story of when then President, at least in the US, it's well known, John F. Kennedy went to visit NASA, you know, where putting a man on the moon, right? The race for that. And he left the meeting, was walking through the hallway with his, you know, Secret Service people and saw a janitor, and he walked over and he said, tell me your name and what are you doing? And, you know, he was sweeping the floor. And the janitor says, I'm putting a man on the moon, right? He was able to connect what he is doing in the moment to the overall mission of the institution. That's leadership. That's the role of leadership. That's what great leaders do. They make everyone feel a part of it. And so, Josh, you were talking about how good a patient makes you feel when you hear the outcome, right? And so, like, leaders can hear that from Josh and tell it to 17 other people. You did that, right? Actually, you did that. You all had a piece in it. And setting that tone of sharing that information, and it doesn't all have to be fake happy, you know, like there's actually positive cultural feelings from sharing the failures and together, because you support each other and you're in it together. And leaders role model with every single thing they do. I had one client that started his presentation to his leadership team with just like a picture of a person and a huge shadow. And he just said, we all create a huge shadow with every little thing we do. And you may not realize it, but every time you get promoted, every time you get more senior, the shadow you create with every action, people are watching everything, who you talk to, who you say thanks to, who you cry with. Like that's most of it.
Thank you, Debbie. Hira?
I was going to add that the way that we're mentored will eventually lead to how we mentor people as well. So it's critically important. You know, I have been so incredibly fortunate to have incredible mentors and such supportive people around me. And so when I think of how I will mentor it, I actually don't have any other role model. My only role model is the people who mentored me, who were so kind in every single opportunity. But when I see other people who have not had such great mentors, they themselves have a hard time being good mentors as well. So it's incredibly important that role of a mentorship and leadership for future as well.
Thank you, Hira. So for the last few minutes of this webinar, I would like to ask one question to each of you. And obviously, the first person it's going to be the most challenging is, what's next? What are your wishes for the future? Either you can tell me, well, the situation is desperate, it's hopeless, there are no solutions, but I think we hematologists are very stubborn. We treat refractory malignancies. We always believe we're going to cure, we're going to save the life of this patient. So I guess I'm confident that we're going to be able slowly, but for sure, to change things. And by more and more bringing this into the podium, we will end up lobbying, pressuring, and make other people understand what is our goal. And I think if they understand what is our goal, and this is about caring for patient, improving the outcome of patient, curing patient, all the rest will follow, in my opinion. So, Didier, I'll start with you because
I fully agree with you. And in fact, I was thinking to what I would say, and I would say is to really, for each people, to define the priorities and its own priorities. And I would totally agree with what you have said, is caring about patient, but not only with that. You have not to, you said previously that our work is very difficult and the specialty we are in is very difficult. The surrounding, the colleagues, but much more the family is very important because it will change many, many things for your future and for your well-being, and that's very important. But if you forget that, because you have not defined that as a priority, you will be in danger.
Thank you, Didier. Nour?
I think things will be different very soon because just looking around, I can observe that people are acknowledging what we are facing on daily basis. I mean, the pace of everything is very fast nowadays, not just in medicine and hematology, but in everything. So burnout can happen anywhere. I do think that we will see a change. I agree that it starts at the individual level. Setting priorities, I totally agree. This is very important. This is something I've been learning gradually, and learning to say no and not overwhelming yourself. I've learned this. Sometimes we say that people are overwhelming us, but we overwhelm ourselves because we want to do everything. So learning how to just take one job at a time and finish that job, setting a plan for the day, a plan for the week. And then I want to say that, like 1 year ago, I used to say, I wish the day was longer than 24 hours to be able to do everything I have to do. Now, my mentality and the way I think about things is completely different. I say that you have to say that this amount of your time is for work, but the other part should be be for you, for people you love. Choose a hobby, an activity, and if you can do it with a team you work with, sometimes is also very helpful.
Excellent. And I mentioned, I think, already in the past, and I agree with you, by saving this time and cherishing the time with the beloved ones, that I've never met a patient, I must confess, I don't know for you guys, that on their deathbed wishes whether they wanted to spend more time in the office or at work. But I have met a lot of patients who on their deathbed wished that they could have spent more time with their grandchildren, with their children, with their family, with their friends, with their neighbors. Josh?
So I think the thing that Deborah said that really kind of clicked true for me is, and this is something I think is very important I do in clinic, walking in to sharing the patient success, saying, this wasn't the doctor, this was everyone. And basically, it's really bringing everyone under the umbrella, making sure whatever good or bad experiences you've had from mentors, knowing that this is going to impact the people around you. And, much in the way of like being a parent. When you're a parent, there will always be things that happen that are bad, and your children will see how you respond to this. And if someone cuts you off while driving and you curse, and you shouldn't be surprised when your child curses the next day. So I think making sure that we take ownership of not only ourselves but our team around us, and really try to continue to push in the positive direction at all times.
Thank you, Josh. Hira?
So I was going to say a lot of the challenges, the bureaucratic challenges, I feel a little bit less hopeful than other people on the call. I don't know how much we're going to be able to change that. But where I think our strength will be, and again, some of the strategies will be with the people around us. So I really, to have kind of a supportive, where you feel happy every day, it starts with you. Then it starts with your colleagues, the people around you. So I think our strategy really going forward are just the people around us, from who's next door in your office, to who your mentors are, to who your family members are. And I think a lot of us, as long as we have strategies within those circles to keep us fulfilled, I think that's one great step, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to solve all the epic problems with IT at our site anytime soon. But I have good coping mechanisms with the people around me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Annalisa?
Yes, I am very optimistic, and I think that things can only go better. And I really think that one positive thing that we can do is always to try to be kind, and share the kindness, share the difficulties, because of course, when we have a very sick patient and we felt overwhelmed by the sadness, we have to go and knock on the door of our colleagues and say, hey, I need a few minutes of your time because I cannot deal with this very stressful moment for me following these specific patients. But also be kind, because since all of us are stressed, we always need to be gentle with everyone. Nurses, staff, we are not the only one always in hurry and always dealing with the last most difficult thing. So really, share kindness is really something that probably can help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, Debbie, you have the last word. We have been very fortunate having you with us. So what is your concluding remark?
Yeah, I would say focus on things in what you could control for yourself, what you could control for the people around you, and the voice you have with the institution around you, to focus on those three areas, but also to do so in non-additive way, or else you'll burn yourself out even more. But more to just take a minute to think, in the things I do every day, what could I change in my routines and rhythms that I do anyhow, that a small change of being positive instead of negative, and saying thank you, and sharing a story, in asking someone for a coffee, whatever. What are small changes that you could do to your existing routines and rhythm that make you happier, make the people around you happier, and help the institution realize they've got a role to play as well.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody has enjoyed this very special webinar. Actually, when we decided to organize this webinar, I didn't know what to expect, but I think it has been a wonderful discussion. I learned that even when we may not be able to implement system-wide changes on our own, actually striving to create our own supportive microenvironment, let's call it, because in medicine we speak a lot about the microenvironment, may help us all find a greater joy, more satisfaction and meaning in what we do. I'm sure we'll have some follow-up discussions on this, but for the time being, I'd like to thank you all, the panelists, but also our audience. I think those colleagues who contributed and sent comments and remarks, I wasn't able to read all of them, but this has been really a lovely discussion. I hope everybody has enjoyed it. This is our last live webinar before the ICH summer break. So we'll give you some breaks. This is part of the life-work balance. We need to give you some vacation, some rest, guys. But wherever you are, please stay safe and keep well. This is the ICH around the globe and across the hematology field. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.